So we're going to talk about what nominations is, and we thought we'd start with a brief reminder and a summary. So there could be a community within Quakers, within the Society of Friends, that knows that there is a task to do, a role to fill. And it asks a group of people, who we will call a nominations committee or a nominations group, to identify someone and to ask if they're willing. So that's the very first part of the discernment. And there's discernment at all stages of this process. The nominations group meets. They make sure first that they are clear about what the role is, what the tasks are that have to be filled. And then, in discernment, they consider the gifts of the people in their community. And then if there is unity about a particular person having those gifts, they have a conversation with. They approach that particular person to see if they're willing for them to carry out their discernment. And then the nominations committee take that name, we say bring forward a name to the appointing group, the community in a meeting for worship for business. And that's where the appointment is made. And that's all a bit different than other ways of finding people to fill roles. And it's also time limited. It isn't forever. It's normally for 3 years. It could be for a second term, and so it's 6 years. So it is a unique and very special process. It isn't an application process. It's not normal for people to volunteer, and it's time limited. So that, in summary, is the Quaker nominations process.
And it starts with the person, the people. So you can kind of approach it from the other direction. You can say it's not just about starting with the role to be filled. You can start it from the other direction.
Yes.
You can say, actually, we're starting it from, this is the group of people that we have. This is our community. How can we give those friends the best opportunities to grow their skills, their gifts, their spiritual gifts? How can we enact our testimony to equality?
Yeah.
So it's rather different from the situation where somebody ends up, because they're an accountant, they end up being the treasurer forever. It's about saying, well, what can somebody learn to do? And actually it may be that somebody who's the accountant actually is quite a good person to put on the children's committee, and they can learn new things.
Exactly. It's about
the children can learn new things from them,
Yeah.
whilst somebody else is learning the skills to be the treasurer, because they may have other skills that they haven't discovered, and certainly the rest of us haven't seen yet.
And during the course of this online course, we'll be looking at the cycle of nominations, and there's lots of that. It's a very useful way of looking at it, because you can enter the circle at lots of different points, and that's why it's useful to have that as a tool. But why do we do it like that? How does it link to our testimonies? You talked about equality, and it is where our testimony to equality is lived out. It's a radical and different way of doing things. It's a practical application of our faith.
And that includes all kinds of things that are not usual elsewhere in the world. So it might be, for example, that one says, well, that actually somebody is living with a lot of difficulties in their life, or is living with disability, or is living with difficult circumstances. What could we find that might enable them to participate in the community that would benefit them, but would benefit the community too, because actually it changes the whole perspective of the community if they then have to think about how this person does have things that they can offer that maybe haven't been seen before.
And there is that tradition within Christianity that Quakers adopted of being called to do something, about a process of discernment, and we'll be looking at that later on. And it could be said that our testimony to equality is the basis of all our testimonies, and is about the importance of us all having a part to play within our community. And it can be exciting, a challenge, it is a responsibility, but it enables us to grow in confidence and in our faith.
And you mentioned the idea of a calling. I mean, actually that's something that we've kind of lost sight of often, that it's gone by different names over the years. The idea of calling, vocation is another word that people use. And both of those ideas seem very old-fashioned. But actually there's something really quite important, that this isn't just about you and your ego and your own decision, thinking you know best for yourself, but it's also a sense that actually there's something bigger out there, there's something bigger which you're part of, and also the idea that other people see in you things, skills, gifts, that perhaps you're not aware of yourself, or that you actually are finding quite difficult to see and to recognise.
And in the past, early Friends, there was a very entrenched culture of service, of having that calling, and they did more in an open session of a business meeting. They might think of a person for a particular role and do the discernment there and then, and it was accepted that if yours did occur to the community in worship, then yours was the right name. And we've perhaps lost a little bit of that sense.
But it's worth perhaps reminding ourselves of where that came from, and that was very much about that you had responsibilities obviously to yourself and your family, but you also had responsibilities to your community and the well-being of your community. And that again feels a bit countercultural now.
Yeah. I think we need to recognise that we're now in the 21st century and that people will have commitments to work, to their families. There's a lot of people where they're the only Quaker in the family, and people will be engaged in the world in carrying out their activism and testimony. So that sense of serving the society may not be something that resonates with everyone.
Sure. That's true in one respect, but also it kind of enables people to, it's almost like an opening for them to say, actually, do I want to keep working at the local supermarket? Do I want to keep doing this job? Or actually, do I want to take my life in a different direction? Am I being called in a different direction that perhaps wasn't where I was kind of expecting?
Yeah. And not all the roles that we nominate to are very time consuming. There can be something that is liberating, that gives you the opportunity to do something a bit different once a month, or so they vary. There are roles like being a clerk of a local meeting or an area meeting, which do take a significant amount of time, but there could be other roles. Someone who comes to meeting for worship most Sundays and is a grounded presence might be the perfect person to be an elder, even if they're in a full-time job and can't manage evenings or other things. They are there in the meeting, and they will ensure that the space for the meeting for worship that it happens to takes place, which is a prime role for an elder.
Be their service to the community.
Yes, yeah. The Quaker Life leaflet that you may have seen talks about how our practice has evolved, and it says that we have different criteria, different objectives, and a different view of the world. We see our organisation not as a hierarchy, but as a community shaped by a common set of values, and values that stem from a basic belief which recognises the divine in everyone.
A true equality.
So if we think of the meeting that you're part of, whether it's your local meeting, your area meeting, Young Friends General Meeting, think of it as a community and what helps it to be a community, and the individual relationships and doing things together, and the trust and tasks that get done, and the gifts that are recognised. There's a bit in the leaflet that talks about finding ways in which individuals are paired with tasks that need doing for our faith communities to function. And we're not seeking necessarily the best person. If we were, that the same person would stay as being the clerk or the treasurer or elders, which wouldn't be good for them, and it wouldn't be good.
Certainly wouldn't be good for the community, because you'd find that something happens to them and suddenly you've got no one with experience of doing that job.
So we turn things upside down, which you talked about a bit earlier, and we try and find a job to fit the people. And there's what we're doing is assembling our community from the different parts, the component parts, deciding which perhaps Lego or Meccano piece fits where. And it means looking at the ways that the roles are devised as well as the skills of those available to fill them.
And looking at not necessarily what people are able to do today, but what they might grow into, because of course everybody's got to do something for the very first time.
Yes, yeah. There's we are a do-it-together church. That's one of the phrases, I think, and it's our responsibility to be the hands and to trust in the discernment at all levels. In the leaflet that we've talked about, there are some tips for nominations. Shall we go through those now?
So the first of the tips says, nominations is the quiet heart of building the framework of your Quaker community.
So that means enjoying being involved. The second one is about practicing the prayerful discernment of people's names for a particular role and of the ongoing needs of the community. And the third one is about encouraging people to grow by offering them opportunities to offer service in new ways that will nourish them and enrich the community.
So that was what we were talking about just now, about we're not looking for people to just people to do jobs.
And then, as we mentioned, it's about putting our testimonies into practice. For example, equality.
Yeah, and how we might include everybody, whether they be young or old, whether they've been in the Society of Friends forever, or whether they're new to us, and to think about people with particular needs, like those with disabilities.
And we mustn't make assumptions. We mustn't assume that somebody can't be asked because they're caring for young children or busy, or they are looking after elderly parents. It's really important that we don't make assumptions.
Ask them, yes. It's about remembering not to overburden friends, because that can happen far too easily.
Yeah, we want people to flourish, not to flounder.
It's about listening, and it's about our sensitivity to others on the committee, to the meeting, and to the individuals that we're approaching.
So listening and communication are some of the things that we'll talk about during this course. It is about explaining what the work is that needs doing, and then asking for prayerful upholding by your meeting.
Both of you as somebody on the nominations committee, but also the people that you're asking to do roles.
You do need to keep records. There is some paperwork.
Yeah, and it's worth doing, because you'll find actually it'll stand you in good stead later.
Yeah, it's really important to know when that 3 years office ends and you need to reappoint someone or ask if they're willing to do another term. So you
save later embarrassment.
Yes.
It's about taking the role back to your appointing body if you can't find anyone who's prepared to be nominated for it. I'm going to talk later in the course about perhaps thinking imaginatively about how to do jobs.
It's about putting love